Hello and welcome to another DGCAD Consulting Revit video, Revit Building 8, A to Z, Part 1, and we're making our way through here, of course, as we've slowly been going through these lessons. And our next lesson is a very interesting one here, one of my favorites, structural, Revit structural within Revit Building 8. And we can also see Revit Structural 1.0, which has just been released lately in the last short while. And that has everything we're about to show you and then some. So we're going to talk a little bit here about how grids and levels, of course, are still important when we're placing our columns in our walls and our beams. And we've got columns that we can add in here, and then we can actually add loads. If we use the Revit structural version of Revit, then we can actually put loads in our columns and beams and all that stuff. We can talk about and we'll demonstrate what and how to place beams and joists. And beams and joists are the same type of command. When you put them in, they behave differently. They also behave differently. We can just throw some braces on there, stuff like that. Slabs and walls are system families, so they're not like normal families. We have to kind of build them, and we use a structure dialogue and interface to create walls and slabs. So Revit Structural, just a note here, has load inputs and analysis connectivity to eTabs and RESA 3D analysis packages. So and you can talk between structural elements in Revit Building with the Revit Structural objects. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but now we're just going to get started. So we'll just flip over here to our Revit Building 8, and what I've got here is I've just got a basic grid put on here ahead of time, and you can see that I've put that on there, and then we've got some different levels and floor plans inside of here. I'm going to go to my south elevation here, looking from the bottom, and we can see that I've got again some grid lines 1, 2, 3, 4 across the top, and I've got some elevations. My main floor slab level, I've got underside of foundation wall 1 and 2, so I've got two different heights of more or less a step foundation wall that's going down. So I've got those levels pre-created inside of our drawing here. So that's all I've got in here, and we can see these levels 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the two foundation ones. And what I've done over here is I've actually numbered these so that they actually get stacked. The levels in, as in this is the lowest one, and then as we work our way down this list, these are the higher levels, and we could probably invert this if we use some sort of numbering system, and it would sort accordingly. And then I've got my 4 elevations on here. So I'm just going to start by going in here, and I'm going to add some footing pads in here. So I'm going to go to the underside of foundation wall, which is a floor level where we saw was the second foundation one, not the lowest one. And inside of there, I'm going to go to the structural tab here. If you don't see the structural, you can right click and make sure that it's turned on. So inside of structural, we can go inside of here, and we can add a component. And oh, there's our Revit reminder to save. I'm going to dismiss this at this point. And inside of our component, I'm going to go inside of here, and I'm going to look for different types of structural components. Now, the other thing I should mention right away is if you don't see the component in here, we go to the load option, and inside of load we go down to structural and double click on structural, and inside of there we've got foundations, and we've got a footing rectangular, and it comes in with different sizes. We've got 2 different pile caps that we can put on there. I go back. We've got columns in there. We've got steel, concrete, and wood, and we've got some framing items, which is again steel, concrete, and wood. And this is where we could see our steel, and we would have steel joists and angles and families that we can bring in there. So throughout this exercise, I'll be grabbing different joists and beams and columns, and if you don't have those yourself, there's our joist right there with the rod steel web. So if you don't have the components that I'm using, that's where you find them inside of when it goes into the library. When you hit your load button, structural, and then basically browse your way through there to grab those components. So from there I will go in and I'll grab this footing, and so I'm just going to click on here and I'm just going to place a bunch of footing pads, and I could do an array or a copy, however, it's not a big deal. Oh, and I missed that one. So I can go around it's important that I make sure I'm on the right level. And the nice thing about footing pads and walls and stuff, they really snap to the grids quite nicely. So I'm going to go right away and go to look at my south elevation and say, okay, yeah, that's pretty much where I wanted them. That's the level. Notice that that footing pad got placed based on justifying off the top. So going back over to there, now I might want to place some columns or piers on there. So I'm going to go to structural column, and I'm going to go inside of here. I'm going to look and I'm going to find a concrete square column. If you don't have it, you can go hit load. So I'm going to select this as my column, and I'm also, with columns you're allowed to use this command, which is grid intersection, which means I can click on here, and then all I have to do is window all of these or select whatever grid lines that I want, and it'll put the column on there. Okay, and then I just hit finish, and now I've got a bunch of columns on there now. Now they might not be the right height, so let's have a look at this. Let's even have a quick look in 3D, and we can see that. Oh, well, that actually turned out all right. So what has happened with if you check the properties of that column, I should have checked base level is underside of foundation, and the top is level 1, which is the one above, which is actually right where I want it. So that actually was all right, and we could have changed that while we do it. Let's go to the next level. Let's go to level 1. Now we're going to place some steel columns on there, so we're going to say structural column, and this time I'm going to go in here and pick a wide flange W250, and I'm going to use grid intersections again, and I'm going to click and drag, and I'm going to grab all those, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to check the properties. Now I can't check the properties at this point. I might have had to have done that beforehand. And place the elevations. However, we can then go to our south elevation. We can have a look and see where that went. Those columns are there. They went from the first floor up to the second floor, which is good. And if we wanted, again, we could click on that after the fact and take the properties and say level 1 up to level 2. Okay, so that's fine. So we can say okay, looks good. So you can always change the heights of those columns after the fact. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to the underside of my footing here, and I'm going to draw a foundation wall. So I'm going to say structural wall, and here I'm just going to pick, I think, a generic 300 millimeter wide wall, and then I'm going to trace around, and now I can space. Note when you're placing columns and structural walls is that you can say constrained by 8 meters. Now I don't want that. I want that to go from where I'm at, the structural wall, up to level 1. Okay, that's a property you can put right inside of there. Now if I use this option, I can pick on grid. See what that gives me. Not quite what I want, but maybe I will do that. And then I'm just going to go back and do my trim. Might not be such a bad way to get those walls in there. I think they're going to be the right height. Hit escape, look at that in 3D. There's my foundation wall around there. I can also go back to, say, my level here, and I can join that geometry. I can take this and I can use my join geometry, use this, and it'll blend it into one. Now if that wall, let's make that wall more narrow. I'm going to hit escape. I'm going to hit here, hit my tab button to grab all those walls. I'm going to make that a 250 wall instead. That way you can see that the column is sticking out a bit. Okay, this is where if I look at this in 3D, okay, there's my column right there. Okay, I can go in now. That could be the one I've already merged. Maybe this is it. You can see that I'm going to go join geometry, and I'm going to click this, and it's going to do a bit of a cleanup there for me. Okay, so we can go around and do that as well. Okay, join geometry. column and there. So it does a bit more of a better blend with those, so we can bring those objects in there. And now I think we're ready to go up to the second level. So now we go to the second level and we want to put some beams in here. So we're just going to go pick our beam command. If we don't see the beam we want, what do? We hit load. So I'm going to go in here. The 310 by 38 is good. And now I'm going to use the grid option here. And I'm going to grab all of these grids, the same situation as before. And hit finish. And it's going to put some beams in there. Now I don't think I can see them from the second level. Let's go to the 3D view. Oh, now where did that happen? Okay, we need to grab all these beams, interestingly enough. Something went wonky with our elevation there. Check the properties of that, and it is reference elevation, start elevation, and extension, beam angle, and I think our problem there was when we created that we didn't set our correct level. So I'm just going to hit delete. We're going to try that again. I'm going to go back to my second level here, and I'm going to go in and hit beam. And before I even hit grid, I'm actually going to make sure I'm setting that to level 2 right there. Okay. We can also set usages, which is purely for structural purposes and analysis for future use. And then I'm going to pick my grid option just like I did before. Click on here. And then I hit my finish button. And then I can see in my 3D view that I've got those beams in there, and using the grid system, of course, cleans it up quite nicely. And with the REVIT structural, we have connection clips and base plates and anchors. So with the REVIT building, we don't have the connectivity connections or families built in. When you use REVIT structural, you can put clip angles and you can put base plates down here at the bottom where these columns hit these piers. So then we've got our second level done. So now maybe we're going to go back to the second level and we're going to add some joists in here. So we want to go in here and we can say joists are done underneath beams here. So we hit beam, and inside of there we can go inside of here and drop down. Now I don't see a joist in there, so I'm going to go hit load myself, and I'm going to go to structural, and I'm going to go to framing, and I'm going to go to steel, and I'm going to go look for a joist rod web. Looks good. And then I can pick my sizes off of here. So I'm going to say, well, let's go to, say, start there, shift click, hit open on that. It brings in all those sizes for me. And then that loads up, and it just takes a minute, or I should say a few seconds, for this for the joist to load. And later we'll show you when you want to load or place a joist, a sloped joist. We will have to create a sloped reference plane, and then we draw our sloped joists on there. So there's our joists brought into the system. So we can say, okay, we're going to pick one of these joists right in here, and we're going to go in, and I'm actually going to hit beam system. Okay, beam system. If I want to draw one joist, I could draw. We'll mix this up a little bit, but I'm going to start by saying beam system, and I'm going to create a little area in here. And if I wanted to, I could actually have the joist go across here as well, or right down to there. Depends on the bounding area. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to I'm in sketch mode, and all I'm going to do is draw a rectangle right now, specifying an area at which I want the joist to span. And this, where you see the double lines, meaning the joist will span here inside of this area. And then what we do is we check our our spacing in here, we say the elevation. In fact, 2.5 inches is correct, which is, you know, the seat of the joist. And then the spacing, instead of saying 2,000, I can give a number with a spacing with a fixed distance, or I can go in here and say fixed number of, for instance, 4 joists. And then, so really it's the elevation and the size and spacing that you want to place inside of here. We hit OK. Sets up those properties inside of there. And then we can hit Finish Sketch. And it's going to go and it's going to put those joists in there for us. Now, the other thing is now my lines were probably not correctly on, so I might have to go in and do some adjustment of that. And I'm also going to go into here, and I'm going to pick Edit, which bumps me back into there, and I'm going to go back into here, and I'm seeing that it actually used the beam as the section, and I didn't want to use that. I wanted to use the joist because I could tell by looking at it. So I hit OK, and then I hit Finish Sketch again. Okay, so all I did was go into edit mode, which is like floor systems and roof systems. Now I can see that that's an actual joist, and I can go to my 3D view, and I can go over there and I can see that I've got some joists. Now, it doesn't look to me like they're sitting up on top of that beam, so I can go and I can hover over that, click that, again go into edit my beam system, check my properties of that. Elevation is 2.5. Maybe I've got to go up higher than that. Maybe I've got to go 4 inches. I'll have to oh, that's because I'm putting in inches into millimeters. Interesting. That was my mistake. So that was only 2.5 millimeters. So I hit OK, and then I finish my sketch. There we go. There's my joists. Okay. Now I'm free to go to my second floor plan, and I can take this system right here, and I can copy that if I want, just by, you know, copying it or mirroring it. There's nothing wrong with taking it and copying it from, say, there to there. And then I should have did copy multiple, but we'll do another one. Grab one here, copy from here to here perhaps. Oh, maybe it's not the right size. Okay, then I can say, oh, well, that's not the right size. So I'm going to grab that beam system. I'm going to go in and hit edit again, and I'm going to grab this and I'm going to pull this back to whatever I want. And I could use my align and lock it, all that good stuff, right? Finish my sketch. It's going to fix it like that. Okay, I believe I can mirror these, so let's try a click. Click. Oh, you can only grab one at a time. And then go to mirror about this point. And we'll just wait for that to happen. So once you get a beam system in, which is actually not too bad, now I can click on this beam system. I go into edit. Now, of course, the structural guys would say, well, you know, different span, we would not use the same system. But just to show you the diversity of it, and then you can go in and grab that that joist system, and then you can change the depth of the joist while you're inside of there. Okay, so I as well click on here, and I could go into edit mode, and then I go into here and I change my section over here, or I change my spacing or my number, however I want to do it. Okay, then so I'll leave that one there, so you can see how that's happening, and I just need to go around and tweak these, and there's different ways. If you didn't have a beam in between here, you could make your whole beam system sit right inside of here. You know, it doesn't matter. So pay attention to your what's going on up over here. And that concludes our first half of our structural components and design within REVIT Building 8.